what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Forecast on the Mesh Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alan Burton, Director of Instruction for the Alan Burton Golf Academy at Lake Hickory Country Club in beautiful Hickory, North Carolina. Be sure to check out all the other shows on themesh.tv, all produced here in Western North Carolina. We are your connection to the who's who in the game of golf. We will make you think, make you laugh, and grow your golf IQ. I'd like to thank all my listeners for tuning in. Find us on themesh.tv or any other favorite podcast platform that you choose, such as Apple iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. On today's episode, I am blessed to be joined by one of my great friends, a phenomenal golf instructor, a gentleman by the name of Jeff Smith. Jeff is out in Las Vegas, Nevada, at TPC Summerlin, and teaches the game of golf to some of the greatest players in the game, some PGA Tour players, some Web.com players, a lot of college golfers, Canadian Tour players out there on the Mackenzie Tour, just players all over the world. And Jeff, you travel about as much as anyone in the business. I'm so glad you took a few minutes out of your day to be with us. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. Good to see you, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Alan.
Well, I know you were just in Miami. You said you were down there at a wedding. Patrick Rogers, I understand, got married, and you were down there to witness the whole event. Said it was a spectacular thing. And you also had a birthday. What is it, 20, how many?
Yeah, just turned 45, so I'm
45.
I'm getting old. Yeah,
man, aren't we all? Thank goodness it beats the alternative, as they say, to keep going and working on our dreams. So how long you been a golf instructor, man? It goes way back for you, I would imagine. Tell us a little about how you got into the sport as a golf instructor.
Yeah, I've told the story a few times. It was, my entry into golf instruction was a little bit delayed. I took a few other career paths coming out of college. As soon as I got out of college, I kind of started in golf. I moved from Tennessee, where I grew up, out to Southern California. And I got my first start in golf really in the retail sector. And then from there it led to, into coaching, or kind of, I shouldn't even say coaching, starting at the bottom. I moved out to Palm Springs, and I started out at PGA West and started working outside services and cleaning clubs and parking cars and, setting up the range, all that fun, good stuff. And, moving to Palm Springs, the goal was to really get into golf, because for me, it was kind of like the Mecca. There were so many good golf courses out there. There were so many good players out there, and that's what drew me to that part of the country. And I figured out really quick, I didn't know it, that golf was very seasonal there. So, everybody comes in there in the wintertime, and you're busy, and you got plenty of lessons and so on and so forth, and then everybody leaves. And so, I found myself in the summer times kind of going broke and, not having enough, I was just starting a family at that time. I'd been married for a couple of years, and me and my wife were expecting our first child. And so, I just threw my resume out there on monster.com, and I got contacted by a bunch of retailers. And it was weird. I never really saw myself, growing up playing sports, getting into retail or kind of business. And they just came at me with a bunch of money, and I was like, wow, you're really going to pay me this much money? I'm fresh out of college, and to run a retail store. So I went to work for Target.
Oh, wow. And, not even golf retail at
completely
first.
Out of golf.
Yeah.
This was in 2000. So, I grew up playing the game, grew up playing in high school, junior golf. And when I went to college, it was kind of the end of my golf. It was more like, just go to school. That's when the golf instruction bug kind of hit me, though. That's when I really started to look at things, and I was reading all the books, buying every coach's DVDs, going to take lessons from various coaches. It was more of like college was more of the research time for me. It was more I was looking for more answers. I was looking for more, more detail in what was actually happening. And granted, back then there's no TrackMan at this time. There's no, there's no high speed cameras. A lot of the technology didn't exist. So we were learning from books and TV broadcasts and Golf Digest and, just being around good players at the time. So, fast forward, I left golf, went into retail, and did it for a number of years and was actually very good at it. I moved up very quickly in the company, ran multiple high volume stores for Target, and then realized, wow, I'm completely miserable. I'm making a lot of money, but I don't love this. I can't do this for the next 20 years of my life. And then that's when I made a decision to kind of get back into golf. So I basically moved to Las Vegas, where I knew there was another opportunity to coach. A friend of mine was kind of opening an indoor academy, and that was where I first got my first start at teaching. And, things for me really kind of took off in about 2009, 2010. Got a hold of a TrackMan, really started to understand ball flight on a higher level, kind of digging into, all the technical aspects of golf instruction, if you will. And, from there, it just kind of, I would say I was kind of in the right place at the right time because, boom, social media came about. Mm-hmm. I was able to start creating content and putting it out there for people to see. That attracted more and more players as they were seeing these things on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter. And then, from there, I made a huge investment in college players, getting mm-hmm. players from high school to the college level, and then from there out into the professional ranks. So I've been fortunate enough to work with kids and see them go from high school all the way to winning on the PGA Tour. So that was kind of my roadmap. And, I would say that my rate of success was very unrealistic, as in it takes a lot of luck to do kind of what I've done, to go from basically someone that nobody knows anything about in the game of golf to, working, with the best players in the world on a regular basis. So I think being in the right place at the right time, I think from about 2011 to even today, I really immersed myself in reaching out and trying to build a network of resources that I could rely upon, that I could continue to extract information, continue to extract theories, and then, do my own little investigative, trial and error, if you will. And that's really kind of shaped the philosophy that I have in the golf swing today, or the understanding of how to play the game today. And it was a little bit, different than I would say most instructors, the path they probably went down. I really looked away from going to other coaches, and I started to spend a lot of time with people who really had no skin in the game, if you will, people who didn't have an agenda on how you should swing the club, chiropractors, physios, biomechanists, people who really weren't, even immersed in golf, but they understood movement and motion and force production and things of that nature. And I think, that's probably been the last 5 or 6 years of my teaching career where I've grown the most, and I've really kind of changed some things that I teach, and I think I've had a lot quicker success rate because of those people being willing to share that information with me.
Oh, absolutely. I think our industry has grown so much in so many different directions. We're no longer teaching the seems as ifs that we used to think were, the standards of the game, as they're called, fundamentals. And so oftentimes we see players at the highest level who do not really demonstrate any real consistency of their fundamentals, other than the fact that every player has some form of attachment to the club. It might be a variety of ways they do that. So can you call the grip a fundamental? It certainly has a functionality to it, and a relationship is made to the club face, so to speak. But yeah, you're an early adapter of technology like TrackMan. Has led you down a rabbit hole, so to speak, to understand what's really happening at that collision moment. And I think that's kind of where the industry's gone. Tell us a little bit about those first couple of years there, looking at TrackMan numbers and deciphering what was happening there. What was the big revelation for you at that moment in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think around 2010, 2011, maybe even a little early, 9, 10, 11, somewhere in that ballpark. When I got my first hands on my first TrackMan, I was teaching at an indoor facility with Joe Mayo, who you know very, very well.
Oh yeah.
And Joe and I were literally at this point hitting balls, giving lessons on TrackMan, and really kind of figuring things out together at that point. Mm-hmm. And Joe is really good in front of a camera, and I was like, hey, you got to turn the camera on, man, and start sharing some of this stuff with the world, the stuff that we're figuring out. And there was people out there that were figuring it out at the same time. There's guys out there, like John Graham talking about the D plane, and I mean, a lot, James Lights and Brian Manzella. There was a lot of really smart guys that were we were all kind of figuring this out together. And there was a race, though. There was a race to who can take this technical information and change the numbers, right? We can all measure somebody who's swinging 6 down and 7 left with their 7-iron, slicing it off the range. But the race is, how do you change those numbers? And for me, I credit the indoor facility that I was working at the time for giving me that gift of being able to problem solve that, because working indoors in Las Vegas when it's 110 degrees outside, people were just flocking to this indoor facility to hit balls because it's air conditioned and it's great. TrackMan, I can see all this data and ball flight and stuff. And I would go on the record, Alan, and say that from 2013 to 2015, I taught more lessons on TrackMan than anyone in the world.
I wouldn't doubt that at all.
The reason why I say that is because I was literally teaching 11 to 12 lessons per day. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a volume and a pace that was backbreaking, and it was hard for me to keep up with. But I was so fascinated at that time with, like, wait a minute, all these people for years have been coming to me slicing. And now when I explain them simple concepts of club face and club path, delivery, I can change their ball flight in 30 minutes.
Yeah, you're changing lives.
They were excited. I mean, they were like, wow. And so, for me, it was a lot of trial and error during lessons. Okay, I tried to do this, boom, 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 and here's what it produced. So I figured out really quickly, if I could understand the collision between the club and the ball, and I could explain that to people in a way with which they could understand, then I could kind of reverse engineer a golf swing to alter those impact alignments. Oh, sure. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, right? You can look at the best players in the world and every single week, like I do on the PGA Tour, and you see a bunch of different looking golf swings.
Right.
The bottom line is they're all controlling their ball flight with a lot of predictability, and it all comes back to that collision. And so that was the starting point for me to kind of answer your question, was really understanding impact, really understanding what was going on. And I took a lot of golf lessons growing up, and most of those lessons were contradictory to that information that I was learning in 2009, 2010.
Right. I think that's kind of the mistake that a lot of golfers have made, is they've gotten into the lesson game and they've been given some information that was maybe not accurate and certainly sent them down some bad roads. So it's given the golf instruction world kind of a bad rap, hasn't it? We're just pulling our way out of that as instructors and trying to get beyond that with our students.
There's no question. And I've given bad golf lessons. We all have, and the key is learning, right. Just continuous learning, challenging yourself every day. So there was a time there where one of the exercises I did was I set up a camera on my lesson tee and I filmed my lessons. Mm-hmm. It wasn't to share with the player. I wasn't going to send it to them later. I just went home at night and I popped on the video and I started watching myself teach. And I was just ultra critical of myself. I was like, wow, that was stupid. Why did I say that? That guy didn't understand anything I was saying. And so I just gave myself a ton of critical feedback in the beginning. And it taught me to what I just kind of figured out really early, like when watching myself in third person give a lesson. And it seemed like the goal at that time wasn't to fix that player. The goal was for me to explain to that player how smart I was.
Right.
And I'm using all this technical information and, they're eating it up because they've never seen anything like that before, but they're not getting any better at golf.
Yeah.
But they feel a lot smarter.
Right.
And so
they felt comfortable with you there. Hey, this guy's a lot smarter than I am. He's going to help.
Yeah, they're like, wow, man, he's using all these big fancy words like angle of attack, club path, blah, blah, blah. And so just sitting back reflecting, watching myself teach, I was going, wow, that was terrible. Like you could have gotten that point across in 10 minutes.
Right.
And it took you a half an hour. So I think that critical self-analysis is one of the biggest ways to get better at teaching. I think it's really easy for us to criticize others, watch other people teach and go, oh, I wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have gone that route. Mm-hmm. But when you do it yourself, it's a lot more productive, because you get better.
That's exactly right. I think we're out there every day. As you said, we're learners. To be a good coach, a good teacher, I think that's one of the first things you have to be is an insatiable learner. You learn from so many things, don't you? Your experiences, you learn from evaluating yourself, having videotaped your own lessons with players. You learn from, as you said early on, through books. It's just never ending. I think I've been to, probably in the last 3 years, I've probably been to 9 different seminars, maybe 12, and you pay money. You go here. Like I've heard you present at Andrew Rice's coach camp before, and if I hear about any particular opportunity for me to learn, I'm always interested, always going to hear what people have to say and what they have to share. So I think that's what makes a good coach, is somebody who's never of the mindset that they have all the answers or know everything. So.
No doubt.
So tell us a little bit about where you are today. I know you're working with as you mentioned, Aaron Wise, and I think you're having a really good year with one of your players, Scott Piercy's having a fantastic year, a lot of top tens. Tell us a little bit about some of the things. You don't necessarily have to give us all the details specifically, but what's a day like in your world when you show up at a tour event and you've got 2 players in the field? Tell us about your day. How early do you start, and what's on your agenda that day?
Yeah, I'm a little bit fortunate. So I have 3 guys on tour, Aaron, Scott Piercy, and Patrick Rogers. And 2 of those 3, I'm fortunate that they live in Las Vegas with me. So with those guys, my routine's a little bit different. We try to do a lot of the technical work at home, so that my weeks with them are more weeks on tour are more routine-based. So we've got basically practice protocols that we have in place. So it really depends on the travel schedule and like how many in a row they're playing.
Right.
But, so we've got kind of 2 formats, a format of coming off of a week off. They'll generally get to a tournament site on Monday. And so a Monday is a very technical day for my players. And so when I say technical, I'm talking about whatever we're working on in their game, whether it's full swing, short game related, or putting. We're doing all of our technical drills. We're doing all of our movement stuff. Really kind of digging in there and trying to ingrain things that we're going to fall back on later on in the week. Mm-hmm. And so Tuesday is more is shifting a little bit from technical to more field-based stuff. So we're probably going to do things like, run through TrackMan combines at the tournament site to see how far the ball's flying, to dial in distance control, things of that nature. We're going to do all of our putting drills, our speed work, getting acclimated to the greens. And then we're typically going to play 9 holes. So I'll spend that time with them on the golf course. Well, we're talking through strategy on the course, what the course conditions are like, lines off tees, where we can miss it, so on and so forth. And with 3 players on a tour, you ask what my day looks like. It generally is 7 a.m. to probably 5 or 6 p.m. It's a 10 or 11-hour day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of a tour event. Wednesday's generally the biggest drain on you because it's pro-am day. So you're looking at, they're all 3 guys, if they're in the field, are playing 5.5-hour pro-ams, which is miserable. But I'll generally walk those, I'll walk with 9 with each of them to kind of see, the things that we've worked on throughout the week, how is it translating into playing? Because we treat those pro-ams, kind of as this is a trial run for how we're going to compete tomorrow.
Sure.
So the goal is to obviously start very technical on Monday and then kind of progressively throughout the week move away from technique and more into field based, because, once the bell goes off on Thursday, you're going to fall back on what you've got, what your training was like. And I will generally stay a normal PGA Tour event. I'll stay through Thursday. I'll walk and watch them play. I'm big on seeing the guys play and compete, because it gives me firepower for when we're working on technique, and I can say, no, last week you were tilting back, dragging the handle, and we were blocking that driver to the right. You did it on holes 2, 4, whatever, 7. So I can make an attachment of what we're working on to how they're competing, and it's an unbiased opinion, because I'm actually seeing them hit the shots. I'm seeing them do that under the gun and under pressure, and I think that's one of the more valuable ways to evaluate a player, because on the range they're all stripe shows, and then in the practice rounds with no pressure they're stripe shows, and when the gun goes off and on Thursday and time to compete, it's a little different. So I'll stay through Thursday, and then if there's any adjustments we want to make after that first round, we do a little more swing work or putting work or whatever, and then I try to get out of there. I want to be kind of out of their way come the weekend where they're just folks locked in and competing. Some events I'll stay throughout the week, like a major. If I go to Augusta or PGA, I'll generally stay all 7 days, because there seems to be, player the tension's a little higher and players are a little more nervous. And sometimes as a coach, they don't need more technical information. They just need a calming influence around them. Mm-hmm. They need a familiar face. Mm-hmm. They need just general discussion and dialogue. It kind of takes their mind off of the competition. And so you provide that a little bit as a coach, during the week, but it's long days. It's 10, 11 hour days. And it's tricky when you get 3 players all in the field at the same tournament.
Yeah. Do you feel like the guys that you're currently working with are all similar in their approach to the game? Or are they all very unique and you have to adapt your teaching style differently to the 3 you're dealing with?
Yeah, there's no question. They're all different. I've got 3 guys that probably couldn't be more different. Aaron is a bit of a technician. Mm-hmm. Everything's very, very structured, very, very organized. Drills are all the same. Feels and feedback, technology, very integrated into what he does. So, he's got a Sam Putt Lab out there on a Tuesday at the PGA Championship, dialing in his stroke. He's got, he's very regimented that way. Practices a lot, puts in a lot of, ball count during the week so that he's kind of peaking toward the end of the week. And then a guy like Scott Pierce, he's the complete opposite. He's probably the most naturally talented golfer I've ever worked with. He can fall out of the bed and absolutely stripe it. Mm-hmm. And so he doesn't, his game doesn't require as much maintenance, as much ball hitting. He doesn't need to spend 3 hours on the range. For him, it's just getting him comfortable, really getting him comfortable on the greens. And when he does that, he's tough. He's really, really tough. And so, and Patrick's probably a blend of those 2 guys. He's a bit of a technician in terms of his routine and structure. Mm-hmm. Very, very simple, but he sticks to it really, really well. Doesn't hit a lot of balls, doesn't put up big ball count numbers. He likes to go out and play. So instead of spending a Tuesday on the range at a tournament banging balls for 4 hours, he'll go, let's go play 18. Mm-hmm. And he'll play a birdie game or a money game. So he likes to compete to get into shape. And Aaron likes to grind on the range to get into competitive mode. So yeah, they're all 3 different. And I think that's the tricky part of coaching, is being able to, they're obviously all swinging the club according to my philosophical approach of how it should be swung, within the confinements of their own artistic approach to that. Right. Right. But if you look at their swings, they don't look anything alike. Right. They all couldn't be more different. But yet the same, mechanical principles are kind of governing all 3 of those movements.
Yeah, let's talk about some of those mechanical principles. I think golfers in the industry right now are probably a little misguided if they haven't been able to spend time with someone like yourself on the lesson tee to understand a few of these principles. We don't we don't necessarily see the same golf swing from player to player at the highest level of the game. And there's obviously a reason why each golfer swings the club the way they do. They all have their own swing signature, if you will. I mean, you look at Jim Furyk as an example of this on the extreme, or Bubba Watson, and they have their very unique motions. But I think Jim Furyk's made $80 million in the game of golf, so there's something going on there, right? There's some functionality to that club movement, and we want to understand what those things are. So give some nuggets to the listeners. What are we looking for when we're trying to get our golf swing to function? What are some of your major pieces there? I know a few of them, but I want you to share those in your own words with our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, without getting too technical here, I would say that when you look at the best players, or the players who control their golf ball the best, at the end of the day, they've put a few matchups together in their swing. And when I say matchups, it's a combination of physiological movement. It's how can they rotate, bend, and turn based on their physical build, their level of flexibility, their coordination, their strength. And then at the end of the day, they have found a way to create a functional club face to club path relationship. Mm-hmm. And, that sounds like, wow, very broad. And it is. Mm-hmm. It's a very broad concept. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of different ways to do it. The things that don't change from swing to swing are the fact that club doesn't move by accident. It moves because you are holding onto it onto the handle, and you are applying a force to that grip that is causing that club to move. And when you understand those forces mm-hmm. and the torques that are going to be created by the direction and magnitude of those forces, then creating that functional club face and club path doesn't seem so daunting or so unrealistic or repeatable anymore. Right. And so with each player, you're basically trying to solve a couple of different problems. And every player isn't trying to solve the same problem. Some guys are trying to hit it further. Mm-hmm. So the movement patterns that they need to create are going to be this, X. Mm-hmm. And then some guys are trying to hit it more consistently. Their contact isn't good enough. Mm-hmm. And then some guys are trying to control the curvature of their golf ball, which means the direction of the path and the orientation of the club face. So, for me to break each of those things down, we'd be here for hours and hours and hours. But just to kind of summarize it or keep it simple, starting with physiological things. How well can the athlete in front of you move, turn, rotate, bend, tilt? Okay. That's going to largely determine the types of forces that they put on the grip. How they put forces into that grip is going to cause how the center of mass of that club moves and rotates around their body, how fast the club achieves speed, and how it's not the correct term, but I use it with players because they understand it, and it's how stable the club face is. Mm-hmm. Do they have a matchup in their swing that's requiring a lot of rotation of that club face, or do they have a movement pattern in their swing that's causing them no conscious effort to square the club face? And right. That's a little bit unscientific, but that's one of the ways that I've been able to get these points across to players, is taking these concepts and kind of dumbing them down, if you will, to where players can understand them.
That is the key as an instructor. We kind of study it from a scientific point of view, and some of these incredible minds in the game have brought us the science. And that's our job as golf instructors, I think, is to help each player to accomplish these physical forces and torques they're applying to the club, but with simple terminology so they can understand what they're trying to do. My dad is a wise guy. He's 83 years old, still plays golf a couple times a week. And I've taken a lot of what my dad says because they're simple phrases. And he said, son, you can't do better until you know better. And I think that's a great statement, because golfers are trying to do things that they shouldn't be trying to do. They're trying to put force across the shaft and shove that handle down into the ground because they've been told to hit down on the ball, and they're playing it back in their stance and leaning that handle forward when they're trying to hit a chip shot, and all they're doing is making that golf club turn into a shovel. And if you could just get them to understand, hey, look, we don't want to put that force on the club this way. Have you ever thought about pulling on the grip? And that changes what the club is going to do in a more appropriate way, and they can shallow out and they can hit more solid shots, more forgiveness.
Yeah, and there's no question about it. And what the breakdown in the golf instruction world is, It's when an amateur golfer who's swinging a 7-iron 75 to 80 miles an hour is looking at videos of Ben Hogan, who looks like he's lagging shit out of it and leaning half forward at impact. They're thinking to themselves, well, if he was a great ball striker, I need to take my 75 mile an hour club head speed and go out there and do that.
Yeah, and hit it 100 yards.
I mean, the whole thing is blown up right there. Okay, if you were swinging 100 mile an hour 7-iron, we may be able to do something more like what Hogan's doing, leaning that shaft and beating down on that ground. But you're not doing that. So most of our clients and most amateur golfers in the world are doing it backwards. Right. Their concept is backwards.
Yeah, totally agree. So that's the fun in the game, and is taking this scientific research from these incredibly sharp, folks in our industry now, and just taking that knowledge and helping golfers. I mean, I'm seeing most of my players now look at me like I have three heads when I share these new concepts. I've never heard that. I've never heard do that versus this, and it sounds blasphemous to them to say, look, I'm not concerned with where your feet are right now. Let's understand this. The ball doesn't know you have feet. We'll get to feet in a minute because there's a relationship the feet have to what you're going to be able to do in terms of rotation, balance, and force that you're applying to the ground. And we're going to talk about that. But let's talk about this first. Let's get your mind aware of a low point concept or a face-to-path relationship, and then we'll branch out from there as your knowledge grows. But and
it's all dependent on your skill level. Most guys that come to me, honestly, this day and age, I don't teach many high handicappers anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's not because I choose to not do that. It's because I know that it's a requirement of time that I can't give them. So if I'm taking on a brand new player who's starting from scratch and hasn't played much golf, I enjoy those lessons as much as any because I feel like I can take them from A to Z really fast. Mm-hmm. Like if a 100 shooter comes to me, I think in a matter of weeks I can have them in the 90s.
Sure.
And as the player gets better and better and better, those gains, obviously, as you know, become harder and harder to find.
Right.
And the things that you're working on or how you're going to structure those lessons are going to be different for a guy that's shooting 100, a guy shooting 90, a guy that's shooting 80, or a guy that's trying to break 70 consistently. So you got to be able to tailor all those different messages to those different levels of players.
Absolutely. So let's talk putting for a minute. I know you've spent a lot of time with your players on the putting green. You're looking at Sam Putt Lab data and stroke mechanics. How many of your players on the PGA Tour that you're currently working with would you say have absolute model movement of their putter when they're putting their best?
Well, I would start with, first of all, I don't think there is a such thing as a model in putting. And the reason why is I've measured over 100 PGA Tour players on my Sam Putt Lab. So I got a pretty large database.
Yep.
And I've got movement patterns that when you look at their Sam Putt Lab data, you can't tell if they're a 15 handicap or the best putter in the world. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. Brian Gay is a really close friend of mine, and I've worked on and off with Brian for 7 or 8 years now. And I've measured Brian a number of times on the Sam Putt Lab. Brian probably has the worst Sam Putt Lab data of any professional player I've ever measured. And this guy is a perennially top 10 player putter in the world every single year on the PGA Tour for 15 straight years.
Right.
I think he's ranked 11th right now in strokes gained putting. And why is that the case? Well, Brian aims his putter 4 degrees to the right, and he thinks he's aiming dead square.
Right.
Before he takes the putter back, he starts bouncing it on the ground, and through the process of bouncing it on the ground, the face actually works more towards square. But that's how he triggers his backswing. He takes the putter back straight back. He makes a little loop at the end of his backstroke where it shifts out across the line, and he comes across his putts. His path is 3 degrees left with a basically square club face. Now, if I showed his Sam Putt Lab data to most players, they'd be like, well, this guy can't break 80. He's one of the absolute best putters that's ever lived.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, the thing is understanding patterns. Putting for me is all pattern recognition. Mm-hmm. And to do that, I have to watch them play. I have to watch them compete. I have to watch them do their drills, and I have to measure them in different environments. So one of the things I'll do with the Sam Putt Lab is with every player that I measure, I'll measure them on a straight, I'll measure them on a right to left and a left to right.
Right.
And I'll look at those stroke patterns and say, okay, here's what they're doing when they're faced with this visual perception of the hole or this visual perception of the break or the target. And I'll start, basically just start peeling back the layers there and look for the underlying patterns. Mm-hmm. And, what I found is, golfers who achieve, playing at higher levels, PGA Tour, good college, mini tour levels, these guys generally mostly have pretty solid movement patterns, but they don't really understand their patterns and they don't understand their tendencies. So when their stroke gets off, they don't really know how to solve it.
Right.
And the biggest disconnect I've seen when those guys don't putt well or don't make putts, it's because A, their speed control is off, mm-hmm. or B, they're just not reading the greens well. Right. And reading the greens sounds very simple, but it's not, because when you go from Poana on the West Coast to Bermuda in Florida, man, it's different. It's totally different because the grain, the stemps, the speed of the greens, that's all influencing, as you know, how much the ball is going to break. And a lot of guys that don't use something like aim point, who just use their eyes. Well, they're just seeing slope. They're just seeing the contour and the movement of the ground, but they're not really aware of the friction of that different surface. Mm-hmm. They're not really aware of the grain of that surface. And so therefore they don't put together the dots. They don't connect the dots fast enough to make that adjustment from a green reading perspective. And then all of a sudden they start tinkering with their stroke.
Right. They go immediately to their stroke.
I'm not making putts right now. I'm missing everything high. So I must be pushing the ball.
Right.
So, but yet they sit here on a putting mirror and for 2 hours, hit putts through a gate as tight as, right. You can imagine. I'm like, you're not pushing putts, buddy.
Right,
You're rolling this thing right through this gate here.
And that's part of our job, isn't it, to get players to not scratch the wrong itch, as I say. You're scratching the wrong itch here,
Yeah.
And that's a part of the process, is to have good feedback when they're practicing, because that's true. Golfers will walk off of a green having just missed a 10-foot birdie putt, and they're just immediately convinced that, hey, I pushed it, man. I know I did. And you say, well, that thing was breaking right to left about 7 inches. You pushed it, but that thing was 4 feet past the hole. Let's talk about speed. Yeah, you want to talk about line. Let's talk about that 4 foot past the hole speed you just created on that 10-footer. It's a compatibility issue sometimes, isn't it? Well, that's fascinating stuff, because I'm a believer as well that there is no perfection, and that's a topic I get a lot. Golfers come to us and they say, man, I want to be more consistent. And that is the question we're often, presented with. How do I, gain consistency? And I think there's a range that we need to bring golfers into. I mean, if you're looking at numbers on TrackMan, you're going to see your best players put that club face in a particular place. It's not going to be that exact number on every shot they hit when they're standing there hitting golf balls. There's a tolerance that club face is going to be within. Would you say it's 1 degree either side of their intended club face on their best ball striking days?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I look at with my tour players is when they tell me the ball flight pattern that they're trying to achieve, whether it's a draw or a fade or relatively straight, one of the things I assess is the consistency of the club face.
Sure.
Because those patterns are going to cause variance in those club face deliveries. And so some guys think they play better hitting a draw, and I let them do that on TrackMan. And I'm like, okay, here's your face. It's plus or minus 2 degrees. And I'm like, okay, hit me 5 or 6, 10 fades in a row. And they'll hit 10 fades in a row. And I'm like, well, when you hit a fade, your club face is plus or minus a half a degree. When you hit a draw, it's plus or minus 2 degrees. So which one of these do you think is going to give you a more predictable ball flight?
Right.
So sometimes it's just making them aware of what they do. But yeah, to answer your question, my players are all controlling that club face plus or minus about a degree.
Right. That's what it takes to play at the level that they play. And if you look at the recreational golfer, they probably would change the face 5 or 6 degrees in either direction of their intended club face. And it's because they're working that club face so much. They're working their hands or rotating that grip, putting force on that that rotational force around that handle, and they have no control of that club face because they're avoiding. I don't want to hit that next shot to the right. I want to hit it. I don't want to hit it way over there to the right, and so the next one goes 40 yards left. Well, hey,
yeah. There's no doubt about it.
So, yeah, getting that club face under some sort of consistent pattern is the key to better golf for sure for all players. Well, I agree. That's a couple of things that I wanted to kind of put out there is that how players are going to get more consistency, and is there a possibility that we can be perfect in our golf swing? And one of the things that I'll present to people is, hey, listen, can you sign your name 10 times on this piece of paper for me and make them all look exactly the same?
Yeah.
And, of course, they can't do that. And I say, well, you're talking about taking a very lightweight object like a ballpoint pen and not using every muscle in your body to sign your name, and you can't do that. So you think you can take a 1-pound object like a golf club, swing it at 115 miles an hour, and you're going to do it exactly the same every time? I just don't think that's something that's humanly possible. But if they set their expectations on being perfect, what are we dealing with then,
Understand. Yes, that's a great point.
Frustrated golfers, their expectations are pretty darn high. So we have to understand, I think, as coaches, is how to help players raise their golf IQ a little bit, give them a little bit of face-to-path relationship understanding, give them a little bit of low-point control understanding. And I think if I wrote a golf book today, it'd be 2 chapters. It'd probably be face-to-path relationship in Chapter 2 and low-point control in Chapter 1, and we'd help a lot of golfers, wouldn't we?
Yeah, there's no question about it. And I think if you threw one more chapter in there, how to hit it far, how to, because most golfers by definition, as they make an early entry into the game, they don't learn how to swing fast because they're insecure of where the golf ball is going to go.
Right.
And so they play this kind of dialed back game of, well, okay, I'm going to swing slower. I'm going to resist movement. I'm going to restrict rotation. I'm going to keep the club in front of me. It's like this domino effect of I can now hit it straighter because I'm doing all of these things.
Yeah, I'm swinging smooth.
In actuality, that's not how the forces and torques work.
Right.
And so when you can get them to understand, listen, I want you to swing hard. I want you to move dynamically. I want you to be fast because your competitive edge relies upon the fact that the farther you can hit this golf ball, the lower your score is going to be.
That's a fact.
And I don't think you need to take a beginning golfer and just barely get them to make contact. I think you need to take a beginning golfer and say, here's how we're going to move. Mm-hmm. We're going to move very fast. We're going to move very dynamically. And the club's going to move this way as a result of how we're moving. And when they start out with speed, and I'm talking more like junior golf development now, right. we start out kids hitting it hard and far. I really firmly believe that if you don't learn to generate force and speed at an early age, you will not have it at an older age.
I agree.
Period.
It's just how,
it's how, the brain in its formative years, like to move fast, you have to think fast. You probably can't just kind of stroll out there, be lackadaisical in your life and be kind of sluggish and be fast. It's more of a mindset. It's more of a mentality. You have to train. The brain has to be trained to program to move, to fire quickly and to get the signal to the body to move quickly. And I think for all young players that I coach, like they're talking about making golf courses bigger because they're getting obsolete. They are getting obsolete, but it's not because of the equipment. It's because of what we're teaching these kids. Like I have 30 golfers in my stable that swing over 120 miles an hour and have over 180 ball speed. Mm-hmm. I have 6 or 7 that are approaching 190 ball speed.
Wow.
Now I don't just work with weightlifters and like the greatest athletes on the planet. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is these mechanical principles that we're teaching and how we're training these kids at an early age is leading to explosive athletes on the golf course.
Right.
When I grew up, people that were playing were like these country club kids, I called them. Like I played every sport in high school: football, baseball, basketball, golf. Hell, I even played tennis in high school. But when I was playing golf, there was these country club kids that didn't play any other sports. Like they weren't athletic enough to make the football team. They weren't athletic enough to make the basketball team. So they just kind of went and played golf.
Mm-hmm.
And golf is not that way anymore.
Right.
Golf is now a sport, and you're getting the best athletes attracted to it. I mean, look at guys like Brooks Koepka. I mean, he absolutely mashes the golf ball with brute strength and force, and that's the template of the game at the highest level now.
Sure.
And so if you're training players to do that, you're already one-upping them from a competitive advantage over their peers right off the bat. If you can teach them to hit it hard and far first, then you can teach them to hit it straighter later.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of industry concepts and philosophies, if you will, about building speed. What are some of your golden nuggets for players that want to build more clubhead speed into their swing?
I would say number one, freedom and rotation of your body. All things being equal, the longer your swing is, the longer you can exert force on that handle, the club head is going to accumulate speed. It's just a basic fact, right? If you took a putter and you held it up like a pendulum and you made a backstroke, a short backstroke, and you let it fall, the head would accumulate a certain amount of speed. And if you took it back further, it'd accumulate more speed. It's just basic physics.
Sure.
So if I can get a golfer to have freedom and rotation of their body, so that means not resisting with your lower body, not keeping your knees flexed, turning your hips, getting a deep hand path, letting the club head orbit your body, right there you're going to gain club head speed. So that would be the first nugget that I would give them. The second nugget I would give them is this has more to do with muscle stretch shortening cycles. I would get them to speed up their backswing dramatically. Sure. This is one of the things I'm working with Scott Piercy on right now, who is very impressive to me because, this guy's 40 years old, and he can stand on a range right now and go to 120.
Wow.
And there's not many guys on tour that can do that. And so he historically throughout his career has had this kind of slow, lazy kind of move off the ball. And so any speed he would gain in the downswing was just because he was a good athlete and he could create a lot of rotational force with his body. But now that I'm introducing this faster backswing, he's getting to take advantage of a little bit more of that muscular stretch cycle. He's coming out of transition with a lot more torque and a lot more rotational speed. And I don't think 120 is like his top end. Mm-hmm. I think by the fall, he's going to be, 180 ball speed routinely on the golf course. And for a guy like that, who I think is the best short and middle iron player in the world, it's a big game changer for him. So instead of him hitting a 6-iron into a long par 4, he's now hitting an 8-iron.
Right.
And when you give him 8 irons, he's hard as hell to beat.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I know the listeners out there would love to get a little bit more of your instructional offerings, and there's an online opportunity for them we want to talk about, and just share that with our listeners. You guys have assembled, a number of you and Jeff Pierce and I think a few other guys, Scott Fawcett, have legends in the industry, if you will, have all assembled an online instructional opportunity called Course Kings. Tell us about that and how the listener can get on board with that.
Yeah, so Course Kings was kind of a brainchild of mine, and I thought, I've been very, very lucky. I mentioned that a number of times to be able to be in the right place at the right time, and the advent of social media and the free sharing of information out there. I credit that for really helping me grow as an instructor. And it only makes sense that if it can help me grow like that as an instructor, it can help players get better a lot faster too. So this sharing of information has become more and more and more readily available and easier for players to gain access to. And my idea for Course Kings was, nobody wants to hear me over and over and over talk about every part of the game. So I wanted to go out and find who I felt were like some of the leaders in the industry in terms of coaching, in terms of critical thinkers, guys who could communicate their messages really, really well, and kind of bring them all together and create a digital coaching platform for people to join as a member, and basically what Course Kings looks like is a library of not videos, but a library of series. And so, we're not just making one-off videos that are 3 minutes long and firing up thousands of videos on the site, and you as a consumer have to sit here and kind of pour through all these videos. It's kind of like if you typed in how to stop slicing on YouTube, 500 videos would show up, right? But you don't know what's good, what's bad, where to start. Well, what we've done is we've created series, and we've taken specific problems that we're faced with every single day on the lesson tee. We turn the camera on and we film it. Okay, you battle early extension. Here is a series where we break down that movement for you, and here's how you go from A to B to correct it. And so my idea was to bring on valuable teachers that are teaching all different parts of the game. So Jeff Pierce brings a wealth of knowledge of short game and putting, and then I've got another coach, Shaheen Nakjavani, who's from Canada, who is got great information. He's a young and upcoming instructor, and he is really good in front of the camera. I love his delivery and how he gets his message across. Scott Fawcett brings, incredible wealth of strategy and knowledge of working with the best players in the world out there, helping them navigate some of the toughest courses on tour. And so, I'm adding fitness people. I'm going to keep layering on different coaches to kind of round out this project to where if you're a player or a coach alike, there's going to be a wealth of information on there that's going to catapult your learning curve in the game. And it's very, very, it's very, very affordable. It's $25 a month to be a member. And, I've thought to myself, man, if I would have had this 20 years ago, like how much better of a coach would I be right now? Because I'm getting to hear these other coaches. Like one of the things that helped me learn the most was when I watched other coaches teach.
Sure.
And I was like, man, the way he delivered that, the way he thought about that, the way he organized the lesson and structured it was incredible. And so we have a lot of that on the site. We just turn the camera on and you're seeing us teach basically live lessons. And I've got golfers ranging from all different skill levels to, a 10 handicap to one of my elite college players to even my PGA Tour players are on there. So you're getting a kind of behind the scenes look at all the stuff that you mentioned earlier on in this interview. It's all on there.
Right. And never have to leave the comfort of your own home. That's pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, when you're sitting around airports like I am all the time, just pop open your iPhone, start watching some Course Kings videos.
Yeah, it's absolutely. You don't have to be outdoors in Las Vegas at 115 in the summer trying to get a lesson anymore. You can do it at home. That's fantastic. Well, I hope the listeners will take heed and connect with you through Course Kings. Is there any other particular ways you like the listener to be able to reach out to you and connect with you?
Absolutely. I'm most readily available on social media. So Instagram is where you'll find me spend a lot of time, and my Instagram handle is @RadarGolfPro, and it's the same tag, same handle on Twitter. So I do a lot of posting on Instagram. I've built a pretty big following on there, and I've got a really engaging audience of followers on there. So I'll spend a lot of time on there. Twitter, not so much these days. It's a little hard to go back and forth and time consuming on there, but I still do post some as well there. But you could reach me at either of those, or you could just send me an email directly at jeffsmith@coursekings.com.
Fantastic. Well, Jeff, I know you've got a lot on your plate here in the next few weeks. You'll be going out to the U.S. Open, I assume, in Pebble Beach with your players, and best of luck to them and the future events this year. I hope to run across you again. I know we've bumped into each other at different teacher functions and maybe even in the fairways at Augusta one spring. I remember seeing you there. And I always love spending time with you, man. You're really down to earth, and the players that work with you are blessed to have you as a coach and a leader. And we appreciate what you've done for the industry by sharing your information and helping us all be better at what we do. So thanks again.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it. And, your friendship to me has meant a lot over the years.
Well, thank you, sir. And I look forward to seeing you down the road, my friend. That's it for our episode today. That's Jeff Smith from TPC Summerlin in Las Vegas, Nevada, PGA Tour coach to so many great players, as you heard. And I hope you'll reach out to him and make contact with his Course Kings through the magic of internet. You can get golf instruction there, top-notch information, and it can't be beat. So do so. Reach out to Jeff Smith through all those social media connections. Thanks again for being with us, Jeff. We'll see you soon, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's our show. Again, I'm your host, Alan Burton. It's been the Forecast. It's been my pleasure to be with you. I want to thank our guest, Mr. Jeff Smith, for being on, and reach out. If you'd like to email me with any comments or feedback, I'm at alan@alanburtongolf.com. You can also connect with me on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I look forward to next time. Thanks so much, listeners. Stay in touch and stay in the fairway.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.